Hi everyone. Before we kick off this week's episode, I just wanted to make a quick note about the audio quality. Jodie's microphone was acting up a bit, and around the middle of the show, maybe towards the end, my audio starts behaving a bit strangely as well. But it's barely noticeable. It's maybe a little jarring on Jodie's mic in the beginning, but it certainly does not diminish your ability to enjoy our inane rambling. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Hello and welcome to Blood and Ashes. This is episode 9 and I'm joined as always by my good friends Jodie.
Hello.
And Villy.
Good evening.
Hello gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Ooh, but rusty.
Been a while. No, we're doing good.
There's been a bit of a lull between our recordings and I also feel a bit rusty.
I'm all nervous again.
Yes, the magic's back.
Sweaty palms.
And it's a big episode. I mean, this is it, guys. I mean, this is the end of book 1 of the Wheel of Time. We're gonna do our normal format where we do our chapter descriptions and have a bit of a chat about each one. We'll pick our favorite moments, but then at the end of the show, we'll do a bit of a discussion of the book as a whole. And we will pick our favorite moment or favorite thing from the entire book. And I've gone back and listened to all the episodes and took notes of what our individual favorite moments from each previous episode was. And I'll read them out to you guys. And you can choose to either use one of those or, see if your new favorite moment for the book even falls in that list. I know mine didn't. My favorite moment from the book is not actually in my list of favorite moments that I've listed. Go figure. Let's skip the housework for this week. I'm going to stop listing out all of our social media at the start of the episode so that we can get right into the meat of it. If anyone wants to get a hold of us, they can stick around till the end. I'll list them all out. But what I will still do is go through a couple of callbacks to our last and previous episodes. The first one is when we recounted the history of Melchior and we were talking about Lane's wife who conspired with Cowan to throw a bit of a coup d'etat in Melchior. We spoke about Cowan as a war hero and plotting with Lane's wife, whose name I'm purposefully not saying because I don't know how to pronounce it. And
That's my
I don't want to step on Villy's toes. That's your gig. No, what we didn't say at the time was that he was also a dark friend.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yes, Cowan was a dark friend, so his intention might always have been for the border forts of Melchior to be emptied of all their troops at the capital and for the Trollocs to get away in, which I thought was pretty crucial.
Well, that figures. Cowan, coward, same.
Yes. Yes.
Same thing. Now, did they say that in the description in that part of the book?
Yeah.
I do not recall that at all.
So Lord Agelmar recounts the story to Nynaeve and Egwene, and that's when Nynaeve is sort of like crestfallen about like, oh God, who is this guy? But yeah, he talks about Cowan being a dark friend. We also had some pretty cool and wild speculation about Mush and Shin. We were talking about some things that Villy had found out on Reddit that was a cool idea that, it came from the Aelfin or the Eaglefin as another thing like Mashadar. And since the last episode, I'd bought that big white companion book for the Wheel of Time,
Nice.
sort of encyclopedia thing. And I went and I read about it, and it's also inconclusive. It's basically no one knows where it came from. There's some speculation about the fact that, the ways are a living thing that grows, and that this wind was a parasite that lived within it that became corrupted because of the taint. But that is literally as much speculation as anyone has given the subject. When I say anyone, I mean anyone from the world of the Wheel of Time, the scholars from that place. But then it says that it is undoubtedly the cause for people going missing and going mad in the ways. Like there can be no doubt that it
that's pretty
fucked
much
up everyone that got in there.
That tracks.
So no answers from that book. You should ask for your money back, Moritz. Send it back.
Yeah, no, I mean it's surprisingly vague. I mean, the internet obviously is your richest source of information because the people are piecing together snippets that Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson might have dropped in an interview or random articles and that sort of stuff. But I go to the white book first. And then speaking of the ways, you remember we spoke about them walking along the bridge, and then there was a big hole in it, and Rand notices that the bridge was only a span thick.
Ah, yes.
That white book has a description of what a span is.
Oh, yeah.
There are 1,000 spans in a mile. So if a mile is 1.6 k's, a span is 1.6 meters.
Okay.
That being said, the first thing I did was I Googled how long a span is. And according to Google, it's 22 centimeters.
Well, that's not inconclusive at all. Take an average.
I mean, yeah, a span, there must be some level of interpretation, or it's used differently in different cultures or something like
Well,
that.
from now on, when I catch a fish, I'll just say it was a span long.
Yes.
Every fish is at least a span.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will go with the definition from the White Book, since that is endorsed by Robert Jordan. So he would obviously know what in his mind he thought the bridge thickness would be. And so you can assume it was about 1.5 meters thick, which is pretty beefy for a rocky bridge. But then again, looking down into that abyss, it might not feel that beefy. Not as beefy as parents' belting
Stop it.
muscles.
I was thinking Moritz is saying beefy a lot. He's not going to go there, is he? No.
It's only a matter of time before Beefy Boy makes an appearance. I was looking for some clarity about whether, a waygate is indestructible or not, but there is none in the White Book anyway. So no closer to understanding how Moiraine could lightsaber her way through the waygate. And then the last one I had was, Joe, you were talking about the nation that had the 2 swords on their back, and I thought, I was polling my my spotty memory, and I mentioned a guy from the New Spring who I thought was Kandori. I think it's the Kandoris that have like bells in their hair and carry 2 swords. I was right about the character, but he's from Arafel. It's the Arafellan soldiers that all have 2 swords on their back.
Sweet. That's my new favorite borderland now.
Yes, they haven't fucked anything up yet.
No, but listen, bells in your hair, that seems stupid when you're creeping through the Blight trying to hunt Trollocs.
These borderlanders, they're probably
give a fuck.
inviting danger on purpose. It's probably to say, like, I'm that badass, I don't care that I'm coming. Okay, so with all of that set aside, should we embark on the final chapter summary section for the Eye of the World?
Yes, please.
We left off last time with the gang leaving Fal Dara and heading off toward the Blight. So chapter 48 is just aptly called The Blight. So Joe, why don't you take us through that?
Whew. Yes, the Blight. Finally, a chapter called the Blight, heading into the Blight. We've heard so much about the Blight. Said it 3 times. So the Fellowship makes its way there.
Fellowship, come on.
That's what my notes say. I'm just reading my notes, man.
Mm-hmm.
So they're escorted to like the garrison on the border by Ingtar and 100 lancers. He is not happy about having to escort them because he just wants to get to the battle at Tarwin's Gap.
Which is puzzling, right? Because he's a dark friend.
Exactly. That was the next point I was going to bring up. But yeah, maybe he's just, so dedicated to his role that,
He's method acting.
He's method acting, totally. He's not happy. And he wants to get to this battle at Tarwin Gap. That morning, everyone had already left. I think it was that morning. Had already left Fal Dara, and the long column had headed out towards Tarwin's Gap. And he and his 100 lancers had to escort this Aes Sedai and these country bumpkins to the border and then turn away from there and to go and join them. And Nynaeve actually comments on his eagerness to fight Trollocs, and he's truly puzzled by her, like, why are you so eager? He looks confused. He looks to Lan, and he's like, it's why I am, it is, the reason I exist is to kill Trollocs and let them in later on, I suppose, when his dark friendliness kicks in. Or whatever his motives are, they're unclear at this moment in time.
I love dark friendliness as a noun.
Yeah, man, this is fantasy. You can invent anything. So after an hour or so of riding, that's it. They go through the the gate, and Ingtar and his men head off at a steady pace to go and kill some Trollocs, and the boys and Moraine and everybody head into the Blight, go past the border gate, and in they go. And if they're traveling for about an hour, and everybody's still thinking, all the Emond's Fielders are still looking at everything, thinking this basically looks exactly like everywhere else, and there's not much of a difference. But the further they go in, the more the temperature starts rising. They as you get closer up on, and you look at the trees and the leaves, they seem to be sickly and bloated, and they've got red veins and black lines on them, and they look like they're rotting on the leaf, on the branch at least. So yeah, as it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and they're commenting on it like, "Oh, it's the best weather we've had all year." Start taking off their coats, and it's like, yeah, well, now you're getting into the Blight. So yeah, except the only people that are not taking it off are, of course, Lan and Moraine, who are using their Aes Sedai. That's another thing that's not of the power. This ability to ignore the weather, the cold, and the heat. I remember reading in the series later on that that's just a mind trick of the mind. It's a Jedi mind trick or something. So they don't have to. It's got nothing to do with the power. And Perrin as well. His wolfiness, I suppose, is protecting him from feeling the heat as much. And he's also just determined. Maybe he's not even thinking about it. I don't know. Someone's got a theory on that. They can run it by me.
Oh, I've got one. The man's been hammering lead and iron in front of a forge. He's used to being hot, man.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
Duh.
a valid point.
I feel so stupid now. He's been dressed in head to toe leather in front of a giant fire for 10 years. Yeah, he can take the heat. So that's when they start, and the air as well. Like when they get into the Blight, it starts really stinking. The air, it smells like rotting flesh. So like the descriptions in this book as well are pretty intense. They're trying to cover their mouths with things, with cloths, even because of the heat. Matt again spews. The word that Robert Jordan wrote was spew. Like he didn't say vomit or anything. He spewed several times along the way. Spewing. That reminds me, Jethro. Shout out to Elisa, who is also listening to this podcast.
Way to blow up Jethro's spot.
But then, like every now and then, through this heat comes a cold gust of wind down from the mountains, which is actually even worse because even though the temperature drops, it smells like a freshly opened tomb, and it's so cold that the sweat on their face literally ices on their skin, and as soon as it's gone, it melts again, and it's leaving like these dirty lines running down their faces. So it's a very descriptive part, and you can imagine it's very well written, in my opinion, at least. To give you this sense of like, even though everything kind of looks the same, it's all off. Nynaeve as well also says that it just feels off because she's in touch with the weather as well, because being a wisdom. Perrin as well senses the wrongness of it from his connection with the wolves, and so does Lan, of course. Like everything is just off, and this kind of this heat and the smell is really is getting to everybody. They're heading over the mountains because they know that Moraine knows where the Green Man is. And the last time she said he was on like a part just past the first highest peak. So they're heading up in that direction, but they realize they're not going to make it in one day. They're going to make it before nightfall. And you don't want to be caught up in those passes in the Blight, in the dark. So they decide they're going to make camp for the night. And the closest place that they can is Melchior. And this is where we get our first look at Melchior as well, after it's been absorbed by the Blight. And Lan's not happy to go and camp there, but it's the safest place. It's the most logical place to go. As they get closer, they can see the 7 towers. They think they're hills in the beginning, but as they get closer, they can see the 7 towers, and they can see the shining lakes. And Matt even comments as well, as like, "Oh, look at that crystal clear water. Let's go camp next to it, because it must be cooler down there." And like at that moment, something broils like this massive body inside the water. Like the description is, it's so big that it must be just. It's like it's lying in a puddle. It's too big to be inside this lake to have any room to move. So it's just writhing, and it has these spikes on its back, or these tentacles, and at the end of the tentacles are hands. It's just something truly horrific. So everybody's like, "Nope, not going to camp near there. We'll just camp over here where we are." And so that's when Moraine starts setting up camp, and she puts up some wards as well to make them invisible so that no one can find them, of course, and no one sees them. So they start making some tea. Obviously, got to have your tea when you're camping. And the sheep herders as well. They're off like hobbling the horses and tying them up. And when they turn around, everyone's disappeared, and they're freaking out. And Land's like, sheep herders. And as he walks away from them, and he enters the boundary where the wards are up, he disappears as well. So it's like invisible, so they can't see so no one can see their campfires at night or hear them or anything like that. So she's just trying to protect them for the evening. And so the Egwene is excited to hear from Moraine as well that she'll be able to learn this weave specifically. She's all still excited. So we have this little moment of innocence as well. They're in the middle of the Blight, and Nynaeve is still a little girl and getting excited about being able to learn this. And Nynaeve as well says like, okay, I'll have to go with you to the White Tower just to protect you and make sure that you don't just get corrupted. But whatever, we're not buying it, Nynaeve, because Nynaeve is also excited to learn that she could also channel, and of course she wants to learn this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But she's too proud to admit it. Oh, side note. I was watching a movie last night. Dora the Explorer. I'm a dad.
Not where I thought that was going to go.
Not where no. It was movie night with the kids. So there's a movie by Nickelodeon, Dora and the Lost City of Gold, 2019. It is actually rather enjoyable. Live action. And one of the four main characters is played by Egwene, the actress that's going to play Egwene. So if you want to see her
cool.
in a movie, Morris, with your girls, if you want to watch this, they love Dora. Watch this movie and you can see her acting chops. And
okay,
yeah, I was watching it because this is the second time I've watched this Dora movie,
and
obviously, and I was looking at it the second time, going, this woman's face is so familiar now. Like I know I've watched it before, but I don't remember this movie at all. And then I realized afterwards in a quick Google, like, oh crap, it's Egwene. So there you go. There's a movie for you.
Amazing. I will check that out. I don't know if I'll watch the whole thing, but I'll definitely check it out.
Look, it surprised the hell out of me. It is not at all a bad movie. It's actually quite funny.
Is Swiper in it?
Yes, he is. And
okay, great.
His voiced by Benicio del Toro. So yeah.
Okay, I might actually check that out.
It's actually, it's not what you expect. Anyway, that's enough about Dora. Moving on. So they're living in this little happy delusion that they're all gonna go, and then she's like, Gwyn's like, oh, and Rand, you can come with too, and you could be my warder and everything. And Rand remembers what Min said, and he's like, oh,
tragic.
Rand. He's trying to like, I'll be happy to be your warder, but inside, he knows that look, this is not going to happen according to what Min said, according to what his first wife said. So that's not going to happen. So everybody goes to sleep that night. Well, tries to, at least, and then Nynaeve and Lan have this deep chat as well, and this is where he really opens up for the first time to her, and she to him. And he's basically in this conversation telling her that, look, there's no way that we can be a thing, that we could be a couple. I'm married to the Blight, basically. Like, my death is already ordained. I will die fighting the Dark One. There's nothing. I have no lands. I have no kingdom. I have no money. I have nothing to give you and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, I don't care about that. But, that's how it ends anyway. Nothing can be resolved. And that he's basically going to die fighting the Shadow, and that's no way. He doesn't want to, bring her into his life in that context. And that's how and then he ends it for the night, and that's how the chapter ends, on a very downer note. Is there anything I missed there?
Not for me. You covered all the.
You've pretty much wrapped that up. These chapters are quite short, so
yeah, I've only got 2 pages of notes on this one.
Yeah.
In comparison to Moritz's 9. So yeah, not a lot going on there. They're in the Blight. Everybody's just trying to make it through the night on their first camping trip. And everything is horrific and smells terrible. The end.
Yeah, that Blight description is something else. I think at one point, the thing that sort of got to me is like he describes flowers hanging from their stems, like drooping and looking waxy and bloated.
Yeah.
And just like really cemented that image for me. Like everything looks like it's about to burst, and it's oozing stuff. And it's just the smell and the heat. And I agree with you, Joe. Like that is a very, very descriptive passage, and it really takes you there.
Yeah. Like when it's hot, it stinks like rotting meat, and when it's cold, it smells like an open tomb. It's like there's no winning.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds like some of these places people like to travel that I don't like to go.
Queensland.
I was going to say sort of on the equator somewhere.
Sorry, Queensland. Love you guys.
There you go, all our Queensland listeners. Thanks, Moritz.
Yeah, both of them. I also just really felt for both Lan and Nynaeve. I mean, to some extent, also for Rand and Egwene. Like like you said, Joe, Rand is sort of thinking in his mind. He's saying the nice thing. He's almost being Aes Sedai about it. Like I think he says, "I would love to be your warder," not saying, "I will never be your warder." Because what he's saying is true. He would love to be it, but he knows that it won't happen. But then specifically, like Nynaeve and Lan and that exchange that they have is. It's heartbreaking because I mean they use words like not to each other, but Lan I think says the word love. Like he says something about the man that does eventually make you happy. I will both love him and hate him. I will hate him because he's making you, or he's with you, but I will love him because he makes you laugh or whatever that is. It's way more emotion or insight into Lan's internal workings than you ever see.
Yeah, it's the only time he really opens up in this entire book, and I think we don't see him like this again until this Nynaeve and Lan thing is official.
Yeah, poignant stuff. Cool. So then, Willem, why don't you take us into things are escalating now? Hey, like you can feel it's climaxing. Chapter 49. Get your mind out of the gutter.
Everyone giggles. Climax.
The Dark One stirs.
Yeah, the Dark One stirs indeed. Now, right, my first note for this chapter is one of the things that really made me laugh a bit. All women are Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Rand wakes up in the morning, sun rising, seeing the seven towers, seeing the light of the seven lakes. Nothing's moving the waters now, or not the seven lakes, the lakes.
What are they called? The 100 Lakes? The Shining
100 lakes,
Lakes?
shining lakes, something of this sort.
Bunch of lakes, yeah.
Yeah, the bunch of lakes. At least there's no horrible monsters with hands growing off tentacles rolling down the bottom. But yeah, they get into the motions of putting up camp, but you can see Nynaeve didn't look like she slept. Sort of puffy eyes, red, and Egwene is hovering around her full of support, and then sort of out the corner of his eye, sort of catching them both glaring at Lan. It's like, all right. Then this is where he says, like, all women are Aes Sedai, you can't understand them. Like, none the wiser, obviously, what had gone down between the two of them. And yeah, they wrap up the camp. Moraine takes extra care in sort of doing the wards and sort of getting rid of all the traces. She just doesn't want to leave any marks behind for any possible fates to follow them. And Matt sort of come on, man, like what's taking time now? And then she explains to them. But yeah, they get on the back and they get the wicker baskets on the carry horses, and then off they go. And now they're starting to notice, the trees are looking even more grim. I think it's like pus seeping out of them. And like Rand makes a comment, like they look like they actually want to catch you. They're actually going to grab you. And then I think Lan is like, no, just stay close.
They are trying to grab you.
They are. They're pretty keen on that. And with that, there's a bit of a shriek in the back. And without hesitating, Lan sort of just pulls out a sword, pulls Mandab around, and heads in. And the next minute, there's a falling black body. And this is the part, there's no names for these things, but they sound pretty damn awful. It's more teeth than there should be, and more eyes than there should be.
And arms on their backs or something.
This is the one with the hard spikes coming out of its skin.
Hard spikes out of it. Yeah, no, it's... But immediately sort of gets back in, wipes the blood off his sword, and drops the cloth, and it sort of burns away, sort of acidy blood or something. And this is when I realized now the trees are actually moving. They're going for them, and it's like, right, stay close to Moraine and run. It's time to move now. And every now and then Lan would take another dart in there, and when another shriek comes out, before he could turn Mandab around and head in, Matt looses an arrow and plonks it in the eye. One of the many eyes, I suppose.
It's that first one. Lan goes out to kill it. Like they hear him kill something. He comes back and he's wiping the sword with the acidic blood. And as he's busy talking to them, there's something else. Either a partner or the thing didn't die. Lunges out of the bushes at them.
Yeah.
And before Lan can turn around and kill it with the sword, Matt shot it in the eye.
Yeah.
It's leaping at them, and Matt got it in the eye, and it falls dead.
Straight up. And this is when the trees come alive now. And now the trees are also trying to grab them. Rand again, before he realizes his sword's in his hand. He's ready to go, and he's trying to grab the void. Like, just concentrate. And it's like, oh my gosh, what did we get ourselves into here? Now they're truly in the Blight. It's smelly, it's damp, it's stinky, and the trees are now trying to eat them.
It's now actively trying to kill them,
That's
the blight,
yet
as a
so.
whole.
And they go. Every now and then, they got to chop their way through these trees that's lunging out at them. Perrin is ahead of him. He's just relishing in this. He has got his axe out and swinging. Everyone is just doing what they can do. And then there was more shrieking. There was another deathly cry. And Delan says, oh, shit, worms. And then everyone's like, all right. Yeah,
that sounds fine.
Worms. She'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
And he is kind of like, no, this isn't good. A pack of worms is nothing we can do. Not in Aes Sedai. We just got to head for the hills. Literally, we got to run for the mountains. And they're kind of like, oh, well, what's different in the mountains? Like, no, don't worry. Loyal finally pipes up there. No, they're scared of what lives in the mountain passes. They're like, what the hell? Like, what the fuck, man? We're running from something that we cannot do a single of them. Like, man, more arrows. Give me more arrows. Yeah, they're like, no, all they feel is hunger and sometimes a little bit of fear. But your arrows has no purpose. Nothing's going to work on it. This, like, now just stay with Moraine. And they are pushing the horses. They reckon about another hour's run on the horseback to reaching the mountains and the pack of worms. Now, in my mind, I'm just thinking sandworm from Dune.
Yeah, aren't we all?
And they are just going like full tilt, and at some stage lands like, no, he's going to turn around, keep going, Moraine. And she's first Nynaeve's like, land, and Moraine just cuts her short. Like, there's no point. I need you at the eye. Like, you have to stay with us. And it's just horses full tilt. They all just bunched up together. Kind of a tense moment. And as they go over a hill and another crest and another hill, all of a sudden, it's just normal, like greenery all around. All of a sudden, they notice there's green grass, there's green trees, and Moraine just sort of reins in. And she says, "We're in a safe space now. We've reached the eye." And they're like, "No, but you said it was the last time on the other side." It's like, no, the eye, the eye of the world will be where you need it most. And no, all of a sudden, just reprieve. We don't get to see a fight between worms and Lan. And there they are, sort of calm down, get off the horses. And all of a sudden, the green man pulls up and sort of very calmly starts greeting everyone, big formalities, loyalist tree brother, and greeting the Aes Sedai, to shock, like, oh, Moraine Sedai, like, see you again.
You were just here.
You were just here the other day. It felt like minutes for me. And they then exchange their pleasantries and get the things sort of. Egwene is in awe, like this man of moving branches, quite massive, tall,
walnut eyes,
walnut, hazelnut, acorn fingernails, and quite of it's almost a little bit of a, what's it, Groot? I can imagine.
Groot, or Ent,
or an Ent.
Insert tree-like creature here.
Yeah, it's and yeah, pretty much that's it. All the chase, all the hecticness behind them, and they found the other world. They're there. It's just out of nowhere.
And the Green Man.
Yeah, and the Green Man even makes mention of Perrin as well. Because, hey, Wolf Brother, has so much time passed? Like,
my note is lots of brothers.
Tree Brother.
Tree Brother equals loyal little brother and Wolf Brother.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, for me, again, going back, all woman Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Just had to laugh at that one.
Yeah. At the beginning of that chapter, when they're leaving camp, Moraine does something and it makes Egwene and Nynaeve shiver. And then they stop and they grin at each other. What was that?
They were feeling her channeling?
So why are they like... Are they grinning because they both know, oh, you sensed it too, look at us, we're sensing the power, look at us go. Okay.
Yeah, that tracks, yeah.
Because I figured it was something to do with the channeling, right? But then why are they grinning? Like, what are they grinning about? But it is that new feeling, like as they both realize the other person, they probably see each other shiver and then
Yeah.
put two and two together, like, oh yeah, you felt it too. Cool, 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 cool.
Yes, that's exactly what they said. Cool, 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 cool.
Yeah.
They probably giggled a little bit there.
There was also a mention of the worms. Like I think we didn't truly explain the terror of these worms for our listeners. That Land says that a worm can kill a fade, and that fade will only survive if he has the Dark One's own luck. Like he could
And that's
defeat a
one worm.
worm, and there's just one worm, and there's a pack of them after them. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, I've got to raise some
You're-
questions over here.
Mhm.
Seriously, do you really call a collective of worms a pack?
pack of worms.
I mean, if you go fishing and you've got a packet full of worms, yeah, you've got a pack of worms.
That's the collective noun. A packet of worms.
It's it's a worm pack.
Yeah. These worms travel in packs. Not your typical.
Well, we don't have any physical description of them, right? I mean, there's no weird spelling. It's not like a WYRM or any like high
Yeah.
fantasy.
No, it's just worm.
styling. It's just worm, yeah. So I mean, it is odd, but I think maybe that is done specifically to make them even more mysterious and terrifying. Like a pack of worms that can kill the fade, just one of them. What?
Yeah.
What is this? This is all so weird and unknown.
Yeah.
Run away!
I wonder how long a worm is. How many spans do you think?
Do you mean
Is
the
it a
22
worm?
centimeter span or 1.6?
Yeah, no, the cannon span.
God, we are way off in the blight afflicted weeds here.
Yeah, there was something else. Yeah, there was a point as well when they were before the worms, when they were being attacked by these things coming out, these bodies with the arms on their backs, scratching at the ground, whatnot, and trying to be attacked. And the trees were attacking at the same time. And there's a mention that they only survived because the trees were attacking these other creatures as much as they were trying to attack the party, the fellowship. Yeah. So it's like it's just luck because the blight is just chaos. Everything is just trying to eat and kill everything else. Like there's no like, oh, we're on the same team. Let's get these.
No,
There's no team ethos there.
Yeah, and that's why the other things also back off at that stage is when the worms show up, because the worms will just destroy everything and anyone, including the trees that are moving and the fellowship.
Refresh my memory. Did we get to see a worm? Is it an actual worm?
No.
So it could be the shape of a gorilla. We wouldn't know.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. They just call them worms.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I in my head, all I can see is that little worm carrying a holy hand grenade. Holy hand grenade. A whole pack of them marching along.
A pack of worms. So that is something to run from. That holy hand grenade does a lot of damage. The Green Man asks Rand, he calls Rand Child of the Dragon.
Yes.
And he asks him if the children of the dragon are returning to the first covenant. And nobody quite knows what the first covenant was, but they suspect that it was the deal that the Daishain Aiel made with the Aes Sedai in the Age of Legends to pledge themselves to serve the Aes Sedai.
That's in the Big White Book as well.
It's hinted at, yes. It's hinted at the fact that that's what people think it was, because the true first covenant isn't known. The second covenant was, I think, the forming of the 10 nations after the breaking. And the third covenant was when Tarvalon requested everyone send troops to help defend Tarvalon against the invading Aiel in the Aiel War. Now, 3 covenants.
Yes. No, I don't. My knowledge of the first covenant is scant at best. But no.
As is the knowledge of the first covenant for in-world scholars. Yes, just nobody quite knows. But it's interesting that's because the Green Man comments on what Rand is wearing and the fact that he's wearing a sword. And then when he sees the sword, he's like, oh no, this is not of then or now. But he knew he was Aiel. He just looked at him and was like, oh, Child of the Dragon.
Very well read Green Man there, I think.
Yes. What was also interesting about the Green Man is that I forget now what is that race called? The Nym? NYM, I think. Correct me on social media, please. I think they were constructed from the power. They're not a race within the world. They're not like the Ogier. They're not like the humans. They're not like, the animals or any of the other races in the world. They were made by the Aes Sedai. That's why, like, the Green Man's eyes are walnuts. They're not an eye. They're made of things with power and given some measure of the power themselves, but only in the capacity to make things grow and flourish.
Oh, so it's like a Trolloc of the light.
Yes, they're a construct. They're made, and they were made by the Aes Sedai in the Age of Legends to work in unison with the Daishain Aiel to like optimize their crop yields and that sort of stuff. Like when you read about the Age of Legends, it's all about they were actually this super progressive society, and there's a lot of detail about their farming methods and stuff. And that's what these guys were doing. They were optimizing crop yields. That's what their function was.
The Aes Sedai created a race of slaves.
Yes, they made themselves some slaves, and then also enslaved an entire nation in the Daishain Aiel, who, I think made the pledge themselves. I don't think they were forced into subjugation, but we don't know that.
Oh, some serious political shit we're going to go into there.
I mean, look, you only have to look at Lews Therin and the Forsaken to get a glimpse of what the Aes Sedai that were in charge during the Age of Legends were like. They were by no means infallible or perfect, right? If anything, they were incredibly flawed and, victims of their own hubris.
Yeah, too deep. Moving on. Nobody wants to hear this, Lawrence.
You don't want to hear a deep analytical analysis of the hubris of the Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends.
That's a video essay for another time.
Back to the Blight. Okay. All right. So, do you guys have anything else there? Should we move on?
No, I think we can move on. Yeah.
Okay. So the next chapter is chapter 50, Meetings at the Eye. So now the group has met the Green Man, and they follow him further into the sort of green zone, we shall call it. And Perrin's sort of hanging back. He's sort of avoiding the Green Man now that the Green Man brought up his wolfishness, calling him Wolf Brother and seeing straight into like what he is and what he's about. Rand sort of pondering why he was called Child of the Dragon. But as they're cruising along, everyone's feeling this incredible sense of peace and tranquility. And as they're moving, the Green Man is sort of like helping a little flower grow here, and like everywhere he touches, things seem to spring up and flourish and blossom and that sort of thing. And that's what they were made for. So he's helping little seedlings as they move along, and eventually he leads them to an arched opening in a hill. And this is obviously a man-made arch, and in the keystone at the top is the old symbol for the Aes Sedai, and they stop outside. And the Green Man, he says that he's got to go because he feels uneasy around this place, and he also knows that his unmaking is linked to it. He also explains that it was made by 100 Aes Sedai, men and women, using Saidin and Saidar, who all died making it, and they worked together to be able to keep it pure. So there's no taint on whatever this thing is, because at this point they haven't explained what it is really. So as he leaves, they enter the group enters through the archway, and they walk down sort of like an arched tunnel that's just a smooth carved tunnel on the inside of this rock, and they come up into this like large domed cavern with glowing crystals on the roof and a massive pool that takes up the entire space of the cavern except for the walkway that goes all the way around it. Rand notices an unnatural light in the place, and he thinks it's benign, but he also notes the fact that his skin is crawling, probably because he's coming into close proximity of like unfiltered power. So when they're looking at this, what seems like a large body of water, they sort of ask what it is, and Matt kicks a rock into it.
Of course he does.
But as
as one does,
no respect.
None. But as the rock lands in the water, it doesn't make any splash. And as it's sinking through this water, they can see it because the water is so clear. I keep saying water, but whatever it is so clear. And as the rock is dropping down, and it's actually expanding until it just completely disappears. And it's that point that they go, what is this thing? And Moran explains that it's the essence of Saidin. That it's like filtered, unpolluted male power, enough of it to repair the seal on the ball or to break it. So in that moment, you realize, okay, this is why the Forsaken or the Shadow is trying to find the Eye of the World, because there is enough power there, localized, to actually break open the bore completely. So Rand and Matt obviously freak out, and they sort of, like backing away from it, and Perrin is just sort of like glowering at it, like
Growling.
he's having a canine sort of response to the Blight and the Eye of the World. Like he's just angry at it, sort of like, I don't trust this thing, so I'll glower and growl at it. And Moraine just goes on to say that nobody knows why it was created specifically. Like there is all this power here, but no one knows what it is for, except that it's going to be needed at some point. And while she's telling them the story, or like about this thing, she's watching the boys really, really closely, obviously to try and see if she can spot a reaction to it in any of them. Rand just sort of goes off and says, why have you brought us here? And what are we doing here? And she goes, well, as much as she can say is that they're all Taveran, and this is where the Shadow is going to strike. So after that, they decide to go outside again, and as they're walking out, Nynaeve is busy talking, and as they are getting outside and she's still talking, they get interrupted by two men who walk out of the trees into the clearing. Lan immediately, puts his hand to his sword and he says, who are you? And one of the men points at Matt and he says, he led us here. And he points straight at Matt and he says, an old thing, an old friend, an old enemy. So they straight up found the Eye of the World because Matt went there. So nice one, Moraine. So Moraine just demands, who are you guys? And they push back their cowls. And the guy that had pointed at Matt, who had like a really, really old looking hand, he looks like a corpse. He looks like a zombie. We, as rereaders of the series, know it's Aginor. And he looks like a mummy because he was trapped very close to the surface of the bore, and the way they describe it is the grinding of the wheel of time had an effect on his physical body. He also says that his companion is Balthamel, who was trapped even closer to the surface. So Balthamel's body is in even worse shape than Aginor's, and because of that, he's wearing a black leather carapace. So he's like wearing a sort of hardened leather shell for all intents and purposes. I mean, that is exactly what I imagined, right? And
just like your GIMP outfit.
Yeah, just run of the mill GIMP outfit. But the face mask actually has a young man's features engraved in it, or like it's shaped in the shape of a young man's face, laughing maniacally.
Almost like a samurai mask or something.
Yeah, probably, but with more detail. It seems like it was his face, Balthamel's face. So Matt immediately starts rattling off, "Oh, but the Forsaken, they're sealed in the bore, and they clearly are not. they're right here in their face, and this is the first time that we actually have Forsaken so not Ishmael appearing in a dream world. This is them facing down to Forsaken, no less, like right then and there. And that's when the shit kind of hits the fan. So Lan draws his sword faster than the eye can see, but he hesitates because he doesn't know who to protect, Nynaeve or Moraine. And Aginor just flicks him aside with his hand, like he just waves his hand, and Lan just goes flying, and he hits the arch with a crack, and he's out of the fight, just like that. Your most trusted killing machine. He's now gone.
Yeah.
This starts a chain reaction. Like Nynaeve freaks out because she loves him, and she draws a knife and lunges at Aginor with a knife. And as she does, Balthamel just catches her by the face. And it's like he's squeezing her so hard in the face that the blood is running out of her cheeks, and like it's making these white like crests on her face as he's just holding her. And that sets off Egwene, and Egwene then wants to channel at them. And I mean, she makes a move to intervene, like as she's trying, or this is not her channeling yet. She's sort of trying to, as she's making a start to run towards them. Rand notices what's happening, and he just tackles her because he doesn't want Egwene anywhere near these guys. And then Perrin and Matt charge. It's just like, everyone take your turn so that you can be dealt with one by one. At least Perrin and Matt charge at the same time. But they're also just, Aginor puts up some kind of barrier that they seem to bounce off and just fall on the ground, like after having the wind knocked out of them. And Aginor says, like he's looking at them all lying on the ground, because now Rand and Egwene are on the ground, Lan's on the ground. Matt and Perina on the ground, and he's just saying, "Yes, get used to debasing yourself in front of us. You know, this is where we want you, on your knees on the ground." And that's the last thing you should say to anyone with like the blood of Manetherin in them. So everyone gets up. Everyone makes a point, like, even if we're going to die now, we're not going to die on our knees. We're getting up here. And as they get up, the Green Man comes back into the scene, and he strides into the green zone, and he says to Aginor and Balthamel, "You guys are not supposed to be here." And Balthamel just throws Nynaeve aside like a rag, and he walks closer to the Green Man, and I think he lifts his hand or something, or sort of like signals that he's channeling at the Green Man, and smoke starts billowing out of the Green Man. He's obviously catching fire from the inside. And I mean, it's a tree. He's on fire. This is not going to end well for the Green Man, right? He's already hinted the fact that his unmaking is linked to this place. But what he does is he quickly steps towards Balthamel and actually hugs him close. And Balthamel is trying to, like, he's just touching him everywhere. At first, he's actually like going for him, like grabbing his face, grabbing him everywhere. And wherever he touches him, flames shoot out, you know. So he's like setting him on even more fire.
If you can.
But then pretty soon his more aggressive motions start turning more defensive, and it starts looking like he's trying to actually push himself away from the Green Man, who's still, you know, he's busy burning. But he's hugging him close, and living things start sprouting out of Balthamel, like even through his leather carapace, including one of the things is death's head mushrooms coming out of his mouth.
Oh.
You know, it's just stuff coming out. It's basically destroying him from the inside out. And that is, I mean, the Green Man has limited power, and like we said before, to just make things grow, and he's weaponized it. Like, he's hugging him close, and he's making deadly things
weapons.
grow. Yeah, totally. And he chucks him on the ground, and things are still growing out of him until eventually it's just like a mound of living biomass. You know, it's just like trees and vines and mushrooms and stuff. I think they say it's all stuff that would grow in damp, dark caves and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But in the process, the Green Man is obviously fatally wounded, and he falls down with sort of like an outstretched arm cupping an acorn. And then as he's dying, this massive oak tree starts growing. And I think they say eventually that it grows to the size of a tree that would have been standing there for 500 years. And so he's just like, all of his last power has gone into this last oak tree, and it's now standing there. At this point, Moraine reckons, okay, I should probably be stepping in here with some kind of attack that doesn't involve
about Moraine.
a small knife or a sword. You know, like, yes, maybe I should use some magic against this guy. So she casts a spell where like the ground falls away from under Aginor's feet, and he just sort of looks down and he's kind of like, "Oh, what's this going to do?" And then flame shoots out of it. I always imagine it like a blowtorch, you know, but on a massive scale. Like they say, it's not just a burning fire; it's this like jet of fire and like wind swirling into it, and it's sucking in all the leaves and everything. It's just this massive solid fire, and they can make out Aginor inside, and he just sort of smiles and starts walking as if to walk out of this fiery spout. But what you also find out later is that it actually does slow him down. Like, he is surprised by it, but then he just starts sort of slowly walking out of it. So Moraine just tells the rest of the gang, "Guys, get out of here, run." Rand sees Egwene trying to channel against the Forsaken. Like, he realizes she's sort of standing there looking like she's got a concentration face on or something, and he realizes she's going to throw what in Rand thinks her small amount of power she's going to throw at Aginor. But, you know, we know that Egwene is no slouch when it comes to the one power. Nope. But he just sort of grabs her and he pushes her towards the forest to say, run. And when she starts running, she doesn't stop. Like, she does go. And as they run away, they just hear Moraine scream. And that's how the chapter ends.
Yeah. And that scream is blood-curdling, not ah!
Yeah. From, you know, someone who is cool and collected 100% of the time. It's sad and terrifying. So, a bit of history on Aginor and Balthamel. Aginor, I think we actually said this in a previous episode, he was the sort of biologist. In the Age of Legends, he was studying trees and, you know, growing things and stuff, but he was also at times reprimanded for performing experiments that he should not be. And his reason for joining the Shadow was so that he would be allowed to do the experiments that he wanted. that he wants. And a lot of these creatures in the Blight and the Trollocs and the Fades and the Drakkar are all his creations. He made all of them. He bred these things and he used like foul magic and stuff to make these things. So when you see a giant serpentine creature in a lake, some distance off that looks like it has tentacles with hands on the end, you can be sure Aginor at some point was doing some kind of experiment with a large creature and human DNA, and
that all tracks now. Yeah.
And a big
like
bag of hands.
gene splicing. Yeah.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
that was Aginor. He was also actually quite strong in the power. I think he closely rivaled Leustherin and Ishmael. Balthamel was a historian, but had a terrible temper, and had at times he had to be reprimanded because he had lashed out in fits of rage with the power against other people. And he also had a habit of frequenting sort of dive bars and thieves, and like he had befriended criminal elements where they could be found, however scarce they were in the Age of Legends. But he was just always, for lack of a better word, dodgy and had anger problems
character.
and could totally just Aginor says something about Balthamel remembering the pleasures of the flesh or something like that. Like, he's quickly painted as a complete reprehensible douchebag.
There you go.
And his only reason for joining the dark side was for immortality. He just wanted to be alive forever.
To enjoy those pleasures of the flesh forever.
Yeah. And then Aginor also made a comment about, just like Ishmael, we are now free to sort of walk the world. And I know that there's a lot of speculation, and I'm sure someone listening to this podcast can actually answer this question, but was Ishmael ever actually truly trapped, or did he always have some level of presence in the world outside of the boar? Do you guys know? Have you ever read anything about this?
May have.
There are theories that he was never trapped, that he was always out and plotting and scheming and just waiting for the rest of the Forsaken and the Dark One to be freed again for him to be able to wreak his damage.
Yeah, that does sound like a possibility, because in the next chapter, there is actually some talk about that.
Yes.
Like, he has been planning shit for a long time.
Doing stuff. The traps that you were talking about in the previous episode that I downplayed,
Yeah.
you had read ahead and you were talking specifically about that stuff.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, this is it. These are Forsaken showing up. And I mean, I have even recently heard other people talk about how this encounter with the Forsaken sort of cheapens them and diminishes their skill. But I mean, the way they show up and they deal with everybody immediately, like Lan right off the bat, the boys, Moraine can't hold them back. It takes the Green Man, which is, a very special case, to actually kill one of them. I didn't find them to be too, quote unquote, weak. Like, they were terrifying when they showed up here. And I mean, we'll still get to Aginor and his demise, but Balthamel, I think, died in an interesting way that took him by surprise. So what worked in the Green Man's favor there was the fact that he surprised him with what he did. So I don't feel like it was a cheap death by any means. And I mean,
No.
The Green Man himself died doing it, the last of the Nym.
I find this this whole battle scene that goes down at the Eye of the World. The only way you can say is like they were really rusty. Like they haven't, just really rusty, because if you go forward into other battles later on, it's not the case. And
no, it's all complex weaves about trying to shield the other person from the source, and like it's a chess game, not like standing there flicking people aside one by one.
Or maybe they were just completely sort of, we're going to walk the world now. I mean, all we got to be is out
and walk over these idiots. Like they probably just completely downplayed anything that they could do.
Yeah, their arrogance, like I said before, this is the theme throughout all the books, is that they are defeated mainly because they underestimate their opponents all the time, because they think they are just the shit.
Maybe Aginor had to actually lift his arms to cast these spells and weaves, but he's so leathery and stiff, being a dried up zombie. He's like a piece of biltong.
Okay, so we're in the middle of this battle, so let's forge ahead. Chapter 51 is Against the Shadow. Joe, why don't you take us through that one?
All right, let me just dry the palms of my hands and let's go. So yeah, we left off with the running. There's lots of running.
Yeah.
Just clarify that Egwene is running in one direction and Rand is running in another direction. They're not running in the same direction. Because I mean, eventually Rand he's making a beeline. I wrote here, Rand is running his ass off. You know, when you see an agent, you run your ass off, and
Yes.
Agent Smith is after him. So Aginor's
Oh,
after
yeah.
him, all calm, as you like. Rand is scrambling up the hills. He's going higher and higher and higher, scrambling up the side of this mountain to get away from him. And he's just, Aginor's just calmly walking after him. And there's the language being used is scrambling. So it's like at one point it's getting steeper and steeper, and Rand is actually on his hands and knees and digging his fingers into the dirt to get away. And when he looks back, Aginor's walking up the hill as if he's walking on flat ground, like and he's not running, he's not stressed,
Yeah.
he's just going. And while they're up the hill, they this is where we finally stop hearing Moraine's screams. Like it just cuts off, where you can see that Aginor's now decided to concentrate his attentions on Rand. So finally, Moraine stops screaming. We get that out of our heads. But when he gets, of course, when Rand gets to the top of this, like any horror movie trope, he gets to the top of this hill thinking he's going to run away, and there's a cliff. That's it. It just ends like 100-foot sheer drop. You never run up the stairs from away from the bad guy. Come on, man, you run out the door. So he's stuck at the top. So he turns around, of course, to face the Forsaken, and he doesn't even realize it, but he's walking backwards as Aginor's coming closer to him. And he's talking about, like, wow, like what a prize I've got here. All the Forsaken and the Dark Friends are charged with catching you and bringing you back to Shyle Ghul. But, I'm not. This is where he talks about him, like me, who stood face to face with Lews Therin and met him blow for blow. Like I was his equal. Now I must share power with you, you sheep herder. Like, it doesn't matter whether I bring you back dead or alive. I prefer dead, actually, so that I don't have to share power with you. So like Rand is desperately, his mind is racing. He's trying to figure out his heels are like, he's now walked backwards far enough that his heels are scraping the edge of the cliff. He's going to fall to his death. And of course, in this moment of desperation, like in Goads? No, Hake. In Hake's Inn, when he used the lightning, like desperation again kicks in with the source, and he starts channeling, and he's able to touch the source at least. And this is when he sees that cord that is attached to Aginor's back, like these cords of power, these strings of power, and Aginor is drawing on the eye of the world because the cord is pure white, so it's not
okay.
Yeah, so he's already attached himself to the eye of the world, and he's using the power in there. And Rand sees it, and instinctively,
it's like regenerating his body as well. Like the aging is diminishing.
Yeah, he looks like a man. By the time he's at the top of the hill, he looks like a man in his prime again. Like he's sucked on the power, and he's used that power. I think this is his downfall as well, to make himself look pretty before he starts doing anything useful with it first. You're wasting time, buddy. His arrogance again. Like, I'm not going to kill this guy looking like I did. I got to at least, get the wrinkles out my face. So instinctively, Rand hijacks some of the power from that cord, and he draws a little line of it to himself as well to start sucking on it. And Aginor's like, no, and he actually screams, mine, like crying out, because he says it like 3 times, and it reminds me of what's that movie?
Your Children?
Yeah, Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo, the seagulls, mine. Yeah. He's crying, mine. He's freaking out that Rand's sucking on his power, and so Rand just keeps thinking, I got to get away, and he disappears, and he reappears in Tarwin's Gap. So he doesn't travel. This is my thing again. Does he teleport? How the hell does he get from where he is? Because we know of the ways, traveling, skimming. Like,
this is none of that.
This is none of that. Like, he can teleport instantaneously from one spot to another, and then never again in another 13 books. But anyway. Yes. We'll leave it for now. So he teleports.
Did Rand travel there, or did Aginor take them there?
No, Aginor's not there.
Aginor's not at Tarwin's Gap.
No, he doesn't go to Tarwin's Gap. It's Rand. Rand's thinking, I need to get away. He's hijacked some of the power from the eye of the world, and he's thinking, I've got to get away, and then he goes away. We don't kind of see exactly how he gets away, but he appears in Tarwin's Gap. And I remember from my previous reads of this series, like in my mind, at this part of the story, Rand appears at Tarwin's Gap, like standing in a elevated position, looking down on the battle. But now in this read, he's not. He's on the battlefield. He's on the same level as them.
Yes, he's between the two armies, and he actually at one
Exactly.
point he thinks like, if these guys charge, they're not going to see me, and they're going to kill me.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the exact sentence that made me realize. Because even when I started reading this, I immediately imagined him standing like high above it, looking down on this army. But no,
I was wondering if the cliff that he runs up to when running away from Aginor, is that at the top of Tarwin's Gap? Like, I've since then discarded that thought, but I thought for a minute, like maybe I'm also reading between the lines, like he was in an elevated position, or remembering from a previous read that he was at an elevated position at Tarwin's Gap,
yeah,
thinking that when I read this time, I thought maybe where he is now at the top of the cliff, he's, standing over the gap. And when he teleports, he's just teleporting down into it. But then I read it again, like when making notes and stuff, and the description of the topography of the area seems different. The cliff Rand runs up against when running away from Aginor is sheer, like a wall. And in Tarwin's Gap, it's not described as sheer walls on either side. It's just sloping mountains. So I had a
no,
similar thought, but I've since then discarded. He just teleports to wherever Tarwin's Gap is, and I mean, even for traveling, don't you need to know what the destination looks like as well? And he's never been
yes.
to Tarwin's Gap. I bet Lutheran has those.
Uh, most definitely, yeah. And there's no twisting, line of light in the air that's slowly twists and opens.
No,
Like that would have taken too
no.
long. He just whoop, and there he is. But anyway, so back to the story. He is
Yes,
there on the battlefield. He appears,
yes.
bloop, and the battle's almost over. And he's looking around, and this is what made me think that he's in an elevated position, because he can see the size of both armies. And if you're standing on the ground at the
Mm,
same level, anyway,
mm,
for the sake of the story, Rand can see the size of both armies, and the Shinarians are not doing well. They are outnumbered, still 10-1. They are decimated, their army basically.
yeah.
And this is the point, though. But they're putting up such a fight that both sides at this moment are retreating and regrouping and getting ready for a final charge. Even though the dark, the army of the dark, is that's not a metal band. Like
Should be.
it should be. That's our next mission. They are regrouping because they've had a hectic battle, so they're trying to get their troops back together, and they're moving back into position. And so the Shinarians are getting ready for their one last one last attack, one last charge, because they would rather die, of course, than
Yes.
retreat. There's none of that. Not in the Borderlands. And Rand's like, it's clear that they're not going to survive it. There's no way that this is happening. And he sees, like, when the Trollocs are regrouping, that there's not enough space for them in the pass. Like their numbers are spread up against the sides of the mountains. There's just so many of them. And that's when everyone starts to notice him. They're like regrouping and they're looking out into the field, and there's like this random guy just who appeared in the middle of the battlefield. And there's one of the descriptions as well, like the Trollocs up the sides of the pass, and there's hundreds of fades. Like previously in the
Yes.
book, what's the most we've seen? Like 5, I think there was, when they were chasing them.
In Shadow
4,
Logoth, it was 4 or 5.
5, I think, was the max.
4.
4. Okay, 4. So
I think
4,
so.
5. Now we're in an
Yeah.
army that has hundreds. Like, just
Yeah.
things are not going well. This is not a good thing.
It's upsetting to know that there are hundreds of
Yeah.
fades.
And also, just at this one battle, where are the others? There's got to be more.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not all. Oh, and there's a Drakar as well that are flying over them as well. So like shadow spawn coming out of your ass everywhere. You don't want to be there. Yeah, let's make that description even worse. So now Rand sees this, and the panic is setting in, and he feels his body start to fill with heat, and like his skin actually starts prickling. He falls to his knees, and he can hear the tears on his cheeks sizzling, like he's drawing in so much power. And the grass around him ignites, starts setting on fire, and he screams, and the fire flows away from him. Like there's so much pain and power in his body, and he screams. He lets out the scream, and this fire falls like shoots away from him and creates this giant wall and speeds along towards the Trollocs. And then as well, like in frustration afterwards, like as this wall of fire is moving away from him, he starts beating his fists on the ground, and the ground starts vibrating and ripples start moving away from him. So this is the first time from that we see a rolling ring of earth and fire, which I think is what Taim Mazrim calls it.
Yes.
Remember when he teaches it to the tower at
Yes.
Dumai's Wells, when they have the battle at Dumai's Wells? It's called, he shouts out, this is one of the things that stuck in my head as well for the rest of my life. Rolling ring of earth and fire, he calls it, and then all the Ashman. Oh, Ashman. So much cool stuff coming up. Yeah. So like, yeah, the earth ripples, these waves of rolling earth go out along with fire, with walls of fire in between them into the enemy. So this is the first time we've seen it like this. And it, of course, just smashes into the army. I think it ripping into their ranks was some of the language that was used. And this is just one attack, technically two in one. And when this passes through, I mean, it rips through the Dark Friends, I mean, the Shadow Spawn completely. And when it's gone, the army is only twice as big as the Shinarian's army. So he gets rid of like 80% of them with one attack, just completely obliterates them.
He could have finished the job.
Yeah, like, come on, just one more. And then no one else has to die, Rand. And the Shinarians see this, and they're like, "Well, the light wills it." Like, yeah, like we like these odds, 2-1. I'll take them any day.
Easy.
So, yeah. And then at this point, we see the first all caps sentence in this book. Yep, indeed. And it's inside his skull. He hears the words inside his skull, and it says, "Not here." All right, and these steps appear into the air, and he starts running up them towards some area. Now, if I were him, I would not go up those stairs. Some demon has spoken in my head telling me to go up some stairs. I would just not do it. But anyway, he does. So off he goes, and as he's looking behind, the stairs are disappearing behind him, and he leaves the battlefield behind, where the Shinarians are now super stoked, and they are ready to go, and they're on their charge, and they're going to go, of course, and finish off this battle, because 2-1 odds, as we know, easy peasy.
That's actually in their favor.
Yeah, like things are looking up. When Rand gets to the top, he goes through a door, and it's led into this very familiar bedroom, almost said, very familiar room that we've seen before a million times in his dreams, with the massive stone fireplace with this raging fire inside it, with the twisting faces, screaming faces in it. And he meets, of course, Moradin. So now, question time. All caps speaking in his head. That's Dark One. But when he gets to the room, it's Moradin, who we know is not the Dark One. So what's going on?
They're just fucking with him. No, I don't know.
Moradin's just decided to all caps in his brain now. I don't know.
I don't think it was more. I think that he's interacting with two different entities there. I think it's the Dark One that speaks to him in all caps, and then I think he leads him away from the battlefield, and then he doesn't speak to him again, and then Ishmael takes over.
So the Dark One just leads him away, like, all right, because he realizes, oh crap, my army's about to be destroyed.
Because Ishmael can't just talk to Rand in his head.
No.
That's not a thing that he can do. So maybe Ishmael needs the Dark One to intervene, lead Rand to a place where Ishmael can get to him, because also walking up these steps and into this room we've established is in the world of dreams. It's not, it doesn't adhere to physics in the way that we expect it to. So Rand has now also somehow walked up these steps and stepped out of the real world into the world of dreams. So maybe they prepared this place, where Ishmael would be facing Rand, and Ishmael needed the Dark One to step in and actually speak to Rand and lead him to this place.
All right.
That's my read anyway. I mean, I don't think it's Ishmael talking in his head. I think you have to assume that the all caps always has to be the Dark One, and anything not in all caps cannot be him or her.
It. Definitely.
Father of lies, I guess it's a him.
Shaitan. I'm not afraid
Stop
to name
saying his name. Jesus Christ, dude. Anyway, back to my story. This story. So, yeah, Moradin finally now knows who Rand is. So now he's obviously process of elimination knows who Perrin is as well. So he found out that Matt was the guy with the dagger in the dream in the last episode we did, and now he knows who Rand is. Like Rand is the guy, and this is when Rand, now that he's connected to his own source of power, he notices a cord that is attached to the back of Moradin as well, but this cord being black and not white light. So this is the true power, I think they call it. It's always very confusing. And then in my notes, there's a big conversation, but my notes are blah blah blah. Moradin talks shit. So
Yes.
a whole bunch of shit like, oh, I've been planning this my whole life, and everything you've done has been me, and everything bad that ever happened to you was me, and everything, whatever. So all bullshit. But it does appear that Moradin did plan that they end up at the Eye of the World. Like he was the one who let the Aiel escape and run into the Blight, so that the Tinkers could get the message. He was the one that let Jane Fastrider spread the word about the message in the steading to get it to the Ogier. So that was 20 years.
The strange man that arrived at the steading that Loyal was talking about, that delivered that same message, was Jane Fastrider.
Exactly. He called who I painted a fool. So yeah, he's
but also remember, this is also Baalzamon also potentially just talking cuck, right? Like,
yeah.
He's made bold claims before, so just because he's saying that he did all those things doesn't mean that he did do them.
They're very specific. And
they
were, we were just, the guys, the boys in Bahrain were just talking about this in Camelin the night before they left, So it's recent news to them and very specific. It's the exact same details. So,
and it's also the fuel for the fire of the conversation that he was not trapped, that he's been around either for ages or always was.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. Like, because if he's doing this 20 years ago, then he must have been out cruising around. But that does sound familiar, More. It's like, I think that's right. I think you're right on that one. Tell us in the comments. Send us a message. And also, he mentions to Rand that Rand doesn't even know the Dark Friends behind. Like, I could have sent 100 Dark Friends to kill you, not one. I wanted to force your hand and manipulate you to bring you to this very moment, to be here at this moment in this time. So, you don't even know the amount of Dark Friends that are behind you, that are ahead of you, or at your side. So that's another, that last thing as well was like, ooh, at your side. So maybe this is a measure. This is a mention to Ingtar as well, being a Dark Friend, because that's the only one we know of, well, that we can remember at this stage of the story, at least.
Yeah, true.
That was close to him. But yeah, that's a nice little Easter egg there. And that's when Moradin shows him an image of Rand's mother, not his real mother, Kari, his adopted mother. And makes him watch as Fades torture her. We'll not go into detail. Hopefully, the television show does not go into too much detail of this either. But not good things ensue. And this is where he's watching this, and because first he shows him different people as well. He's like, no, you can't be. But then it's only his mother left, and his mother is the only one that's dead. And now, because the Dark Lord has control over the dominion of the dead, he does have control over his mother's soul, basically. But Rand, in terror and fright as well, it's the first time as well that creates the sword of light in his hand, and kills the Fades. And Moradin shies away from him. He sees this, his eyes go big. He actually freaks out. He's actually taken aback by this, and screams at him like, "No, you can't wield it like this. Not until I've trained you and I've taught you how to do it." So he's afraid of him. And Rand's like, no, listen, man, you've gone too far with my mother now. That's a step too far. And he attacks Baalzamon with the sword of light, and he cuts the black cord that is attached to the source of his power, obviously. And this makes Baalzamon scream. And it's like the cord was under tension, because as he cuts it, the side that's not attached to Moradin flicks off like into the distance, and the other one recoils into his back and throws him against the fireplace. And then so Rand then draws on all the power. This is kind of like a throwback to Luz Theron's moment of madness, where he draws on all the power he can possibly to create a shaft of light, of fire, and he just burns everything. He uses up every bit of power that's left in the Eye of the World that he's attached to, and flame shoots from the sword and engulfs everything, and the room disappears. And then Rand falls into nothingness. And that's how we leave that chapter.
All right. I've got a theory.
Let's go.
When Aginor is standing there drawing on the power that's in the eye,
Mm-hmm.
and Rand sort of sneaks himself a bit of a cord there,
Mm.
that is the moment that ignites Lewis Theron in him, that part of him.
Mm-hmm.
That is the one, and that's why he could get, because it says away. I can need to get away. And then at that same time, Agnor's like, no, mine.
Mine.
Don't take my special power. This is my candy. And
Yeah.
that's when he just mysteriously gets away and right into Tarwin's gap. And it's almost as if he had a top-down view and he could see the battle, and then he was on the ground. And I think right there, that's Lewis that's taken complete control of him in that moment.
There is a lot of, and we'll get to that in the next chapter,
Yeah.
where he wakes up, he's got memory loss.
Memory loss. And he's sort of like, oh, yes. Damn, no, damn, my father. Yes, that's right. Oh, that beautiful woman. Oh, no, I know that. That's Egwene.
I think that is at play. I mean, there were signs earlier in the book, and Rand has also channeled before, so it's not like it's the first time he's touching Sidon. But I definitely agree with you, Vil, that Lewis Theron had a hand in much of, if not all of, the stuff that Rand does there. I mean, those weaves, I mean, they're not, you don't channel by just feeling a spell. You need to channel specific weaves of earth, wind, fire, like there's specific things you need to do in a specific way. And there is no way that Rand would just sort of luck his way into it. Lewis Theron absolutely had to inform those things. A sword of light, and a sword of light shooting out more light and killing the fades and stuff in a way that frightens Balthamel. Absolutely, Lewis Theron had a hand in that.
Yeah, complete. And I think the thing that did it was the power at the eye, that well of power that was stored there, and it was pure. That was the thing that sort of, oh yeah, this good taste. Here we go. Let's cut loose.
So, Joe, I mean, I was thinking the same thing, or I was thinking along the lines of something that you mentioned, that the cord from Aginor was going to the eye, right? And the one that ran to, that was the eye. Do they, in the subsequent books, ever describe fighting the Forsaken by cutting a cord of power going into their back? Like,
it does come up again, but only in the earlier books, as far as I remember. It's not like later on they just abandoned that whole concept, I
maybe
suppose.
at the end of the second book when he's fighting Ishmael again.
Yeah, there is talk again about cords.
Hold on, they are bound. Isn't that the Forsaken are bound? Isn't this part of their bind that the power is sort of holding, or their link to the source is kind of restricted to that, because even down saying like that, the tenseness of how the cord was when Rand struck at it, that he couldn't physically get out of certain areas. Well, they're all physically bound by a cord to channel.
Aginor was free in the world and he was bound by a cord to the eye of the world. Like, I don't know if it was.
Maybe they broke completely free or out. I'm just always constantly thinking about they are bound. Like, what does it mean they are bound? They're not plugged in a bottle with a cap on, and they're trying to shoot the cap off. They're trying to break these magical calendula seals. Quindala.
But it's pronounced like you are Spanish, I think. Quindiyar or something like that.
Quindiyar. Yeah, okay, maybe. But yeah, like Billy, what you're saying is true. I'm thinking because there is a mention that the true power from the Dark One is not just something that anyone can draw on. He has to give you access to it personally.
And he's bound.
You have to apply for permission to use it, So, and that's why you get the cable attached, or the cord.
Is the cord attached to Ishmael that's black? Is that a true power cord, or is that a tainted one power cord?
True power. It comes up later. I'm sure of it.
Okay. It's also, I mean, when Ishmael appears to Lewis Theron in Dragonmount in the prologue, he is also traveling in the way that is described. Traveling works with the true power. Like when he arrives, there's no, the line in the air that
it's
turns.
like a shimmering or something, hey?
Yes, and that is a true power. So he's already back then in the Age of Legends. He's using the true power back then already. So I don't know why he wouldn't be using it here. So
well, that's another thing to confirm that he was free, because he was cruising around. in the prologue.
Yes.
All right, we just confirmed it ourselves.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, there's a lot of points that people raise where they don't like the only way that he could have been there if he was bound, that it was some kind of projection or something like that. But that's going a bit too far to try and explain it away. My suspicion is that he was not bound, that he
Yeah.
was always around.
Now, Billy, what you said, it's making a lot of sense. Like maybe you have to have a cord to draw on specific pools, like the Eye of the World. You have a direct connection to it because it's outside of side in. It's a separate little thing, and like the true power as well is separate, and you need to have password access to it. So kind of like the Eye of the World. That's why the Eye of the World is a cord to your back as well. But when you're just channeling normally, drawing on the one power, there's no cords.
No, that's Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yes.
Just be close enough to the router.
Yeah, there's no need to, no cabled connections.
Should we do the next chapter?
Let's go for it.
Okay, that is then chapter 52. There is neither a beginning nor an end. Billy,
Sure.
let's go.
Anticlimax there all of a sudden. Big power, big battle, white swords, and Rand is back where he started, on top of the edge of the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
He realizes that he's still breathing, like covered in dust and soot and just knackered. Kinds of crawls to see, like look over the cliff, and then also spews. Like he's just messed, and sort of patches of memory comes back to him, like Aginor and Egwene. I gotta get up and find Egwene. But then first, like, rolls onto his back, sort of like just away from the edge of the cliff, and breathes, and then feels the sword, and sort of then like, yes, Tam gave me the sword. Sort of all these memories, sort of like something had filled him, but now he's kind of going back to being Rand. And he struggles up and eventually starts crawling on his belly and just gets moving. Like also like the mention of my name is Randall Thor. That's like everything. The Dark One was there, and like, man, it must be a confusing sort of waking up after a rough night type of trip. Yeah,
we've all woken up on the ground next to a cliff after a rough night.
Yeah,
smoldering rags of our enemies lying close by.
Yeah, with only our sword still intact.
Oh, if I had $1 for every time that happened.
I'd have $1 in my hand this morning. But he then gets up and just kind of makes way for the eye and to hopefully find. And then he sees Moraine. She's there. She's still alive, and Lan is with her. And he sees Egwene and Nynaeve, and kind of like just sort of relief and rush that they're okay. He calls out to her, but also that mentioned like, oh, pretty girl looked up with big eyes. Ah, that's Egwene. Sort of like now that's like that. Which brings me to that he was completely taken over in that battle. That he's now trying to find himself again in that. And then yes, the Moraine, yes, the Aes Sedai, and then there's the wisdom, Nynaeve, kind of all these things that's going through. And they coming sort of together. Are you okay? And then Rand starts telling the story of what actually happened. And Moraine's like, whoa, spare no detail. Tell me everything. And down to the point where he explains that he killed, and he calls him at that time Shaitan. Like, and they're like, no, but doesn't matter. I killed him. Like, I used the one power and I burned him. And that this sort of Egwene's hugging him, kind of like, no, you'll be okay. And he realizes again, sort of for himself now, Rand, like, oh damn, I'm gonna be gentled. Like, I can channel. That's
his future's not bright.
It's not looking good for him at this moment. And but he relives the whole event then as the memory sort of comes back from being at the battle, down at the bottom, being up in the room, the whole fight. And it's kind of like, okay, well, Moraine says at this stage, like, we will keep this just between us. Nynaeve, Egwene, Lan, and I know, and that's it. And at this, Loyal and the boys come out from the archway, carrying the golden chest, and brings it to Moraine, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like where were you?" And he's like, "No, he fell down the cliff." Sort of, yeah, right.
Yeah, so she tells him not to let the boys know
Yeah, no, don't let
that
them.
he
That's
channeled or anything like that.
But she mentions as well, as she said, it like I had my suspicions at first, but couldn't be sure. And this is where the Bella hero story comes in, because Bella had no need for healing at what was it?
Tarrant Ferry, you know,
Tarrant
they were running
Ferry
towards.
crossing, yeah, from White to the White River when they're running to White River or something. Watch Hill. No, it was at Watch Hill, sorry. And yeah, so they get out. Moraine opens up the golden chest, and inside there's the horn, and also the banner of the dragon. So there's some very big things from the eye, from the Age of Legends, that all of a sudden is in their hands. And of course, the broken seal now. One of the seals is broken, completely shattered. Now, is that what Agnor stayed behind then to do? Did he break the seal?
Well, there's 7 of them, so that's one of them.
Yeah, but that specific one, because it wasn't broken when they got there, and the battle started.
You don't know that it wasn't broken. Aginor and Balthamel are already walking the earth.
So was it broken then? I thought it was broken in that battle.
I don't think so. They can't be broken by the one power. Any power channel that Gwent allowed makes it stronger.
But the true power?
But they weren't using the true power.
True power or something of the dark is probably, or the Dark One himself is probably what is making them break, and they are slowly but surely breaking just over time. But I don't think that battle had anything to do with it.
It's for me, and I remember this distinctly in my first read of it, and even now in the second read, it is a very vague event. The whole battle just between the three Forsaken that's there, and it then all of a sudden runs up a hill, then he's down a hill, and then he's killing an army, and then he's in a room again.
It's very disjointed, yes, it is, and it's my first note for this chapter. Are we done? Is it finished? Should I dive in?
No, I've got pretty much. I mean, they just sort of have their little exchange, and everyone's happy. Sort of, it's finished. Lie back, breathe, and under the big oak tree, that's now the memorial. And yeah, sleep and dream of home. The end.
Yes. I was going to say that my first note is, how did Aginor die exactly?
I don't know. Did he die?
That might be the sort of like quote unquote anti-climax that people are sort of latching onto. Like you don't have a very satisfying or at least any kind of explanation of how Aginor is killed. My interpretation on this read is Rand channeled obviously quite a lot when he was lashing out at Balsamon. And if he had sort of transported out of that room and back into where he was and was still channeling that fire, because they mention Aginor's like smoldering cloak, like close by to where Rand wakes up at the top of that cliff. So somehow Rand burned Aginor. I don't think Aginor killed himself. Rand was drawing power. I don't know if Aginor tried to draw as much as Rand and maybe burnt himself out or something like that, but my read is Rand somehow killed him, and the only things Rand was doing in terms of destructive power around him, after the Tarwin's Gap fight, was emitting massive amounts of just white, blinding flame and light. So is that what killed him?
Your guess is as good as mine.
I have absolutely no idea. I thought maybe it was at that moment in the battle, but it doesn't say that Aginor followed him to Tarwin's Gap.
This is going to sound more melodramatic than what I intended to be, but that is probably the single most disappointing part of the book as a whole, is that death.
I get the feeling that the ending, the ending is rushed. Like he was writing and writing and writing. He could have written the ending in 20 chapters, but he wrote it in 5. He realized, oh shit, this book's getting a bit long. Let's finish things up. Let's wrap it up. Yeah.
But
I agree.
And there's other stuff you could have cut.
Yeah. Let's say, Moritz, I would assume that you would like to cut those Matt and Rand chapters moving from
Oh,
town to town,
as
playing.
I imagine that the TV show will do, they will condense that right down. How many farmers and apple carts and time jumps do you really need?
Yeah. 0, I think it is.
I think that is the correct answer. Yes.
Yes. And more about how the fuck did Aginor die? He just burnt up? He just self-immolated? Well, I don't know.
I'm gonna go with that. He was greedy ass to get all the power in the eye, and he burned himself.
Well, look, when he comes back later, reincarnated, he can tell us.
Interesting. So, Billy, you think that it is he drew too much from the eye
Well,
of the world?
from the moment that he was in his leathery state to where he fronted Rand on
Mm.
he focused all that power into him becoming beautiful again, a prime man. And then maybe he actually went too far and he just took it all the way back into
He
nothing.
also, he also showed, like intense possessiveness over it. So when he
Mm.
sees that trickle of the power go to Rand, maybe he said mine, 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 and drew as much as he could, as fast as he could, and drew too
It's
much.
like teenagers needing to share a milkshake. And you just have that straw, and you know if you let that straw go, it's done and dusted. And just ice
You-
cream headache or not, I'm drinking as much of this as I can.
That is an excellent analogy.
Well, thank you.
um, yeah, because I can't think of a clear cut answer to that question.
Well, for now, I'm going to go with that. He was a milkshake thief. And he paid the price in flames.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe he was just trying to like outstrip Rand. Like, if he draws all of it, Rand can't get it. And I mean, it was created by 100 Aes Sedai from the Age of Legends, right? And
Mm.
Aginor was an Aes Sedai from the Age of Legends. So you would imagine there is sufficient quantity of power in that pool to burn out a single Aes Sedai or slash Forsaken.
Mm.
Maybe we do find out. Maybe it's just one of those cases again where we just don't remember the answer to this. And it is quite clearly spelled out in the next book or
Well,
something.
what's his name when he's remade?
Arsangar and Arangar, is he one of them?
I think so.
Who comes back as a woman? Ishmael? No,
No.
No,
One of these
Ishmael
two.
comes back as
Moradin.
It's one of these
Moradin.
two.
It's one of these two come back as a woman.
Yeah, Arsangar and Arangar.
Mm.
One of which poses as a woman called Halima that infiltrates the Saladar White Tower because no one can sense her channel because she's channeling the male half.
Ah, that's
Yes.
right. Yes, that is right. Okay, well, I reckon we'll probably pick something up in book 3, perhaps. That's gonna.
What is abundantly clear is we are not going to solve that mystery here and now.
No, not at all. I might make a milkshake though, however.
Stick around to the end of the episode for all of our social media links where you can berate us for being woefully ill-equipped to have this conversation.
No, just send us a love.
We prefer that. Also, his memory loss. I mean, Vil, I'm with you on that one. Luce Theron obviously had a hand in a lot of what he was doing there. I mean, when he's talking to Beelzemon and he's shown Kari Althor, he's still very much Rand in that. It's not like he's not become possessed and lost control and only comes back afterwards and doesn't remember. He remembers what happened. He's reacting as Rand, but definitely in his subconscious, there is a strong. There needs to be a guiding hand there.
Mm.
Again, because simply he couldn't cast those weaves.
Yeah, completely. But for, what I would think is as well that touch to that untainted, true source at
Mm-hmm.
the eye. It's kind of also just sort of like maybe the Lewis part in him, just sort of like, oh my goodness, I've hadn't had this greatness. This is absolutely fantastic. Like, let's just take Rand over now. Let's just jump in here.
Or it's like loose there in muscle memory, just like, kicking in.
Okay, let's not discard that.
Okie dokies. Yesy, we're getting right up to it now. This is the very, very last chapter of the Eye of the World, chapter 53. The wheel turns. How wonderfully wheelish. Um, So in the morning when they wake up, they can see that the green zone is starting to become more brown zone. It's starting to deteriorate. Leaves are falling off the trees. The flowers are dying. Not a lot of birds and butterflies around anymore. It's a little bit more grim. Moraine is set up on a litter between Mandab and Aldib. You know, she is completely spent after the battle at the Eye. Nynaeve and Lan are completely avoiding each other. And Loyal sort of, you know, has an emotional reaction to seeing the oak tree again and the death of the Green Man. And he sort of stops before they leave, and he starts, you know, doing some ogier singing in front of the tree again. And he sort of gets lost in it, and it's described as the sun is actually quite high in the sky before he stops. So it actually went on a bit longer, and Loyal even says that he's never done it like that before. But what he managed to do by doing that singing is that the blight will never touch that specific spot. That oak tree will always remain untouched by the blight, which, you know, that's not nothing. You know, like Loyal is just an ogier with no specific talent for singing, and he managed to do that for the Green Man, which is pretty special. So then they ride off, and as soon as very soon they're out of the green zone and into the blight proper. And Rand looks back and he catches a last glimpse of the top of a great oak tree before it vanishes. But the blight itself seems subdued. It's not like the entire thing is trying to kill them all the time as they're riding back. They make camp eventually, and Moraine and Nynaeve and Egwene close their eyes together, and they sort of start doing some, what you would imagine is some kind of channeling or some kind of lesson or something. And Matt and Perrin, they're gaping at this. They're going, "What the fuck is going on here?" And I was wondering, like, why are they so shocked? But it's probably because they didn't realize that Nynaeve can also channel. They've never known. They've never been privy to that information. Perrin knows it about Egwene, and you know she talks openly about going to the tower. But here it looks like Moraine and Egwene are including Nynaeve in something that resembles channeling. Matt asked Moraine about, or Perrin, sorry, asked Moraine about why everything feels so different, and she just says that they struck a major blow against the shadow. And the next morning, they notice a lot of new growth as they're riding. It really seems like finally that back of winter has been broken. And when they reach the border towers, the soldiers are celebrating the victory at Tarwin's Gap. They reach Fal Dara, and everyone, like the gates are open and the bells are ringing, and everyone is celebrating this miraculous victory at Tarwin's Gap against all odds. It's all just the soldiers, though, like the families and the farmers and stuff that all went to Fel Moran are not back yet. It's just the guys that were actually stationed there and that fought at the Gap. And then there they meet Ingtar, who's pissed off because he missed the battle by like an hour. Which again just doesn't gel with the knowledge that he is a Dark Friend. So again, we'll just attribute that to, you know, just really being committed to his role. Moraine also just waves off any kind of offer of medical assistance. She says she's fine. She wants to go straight to Lord Agelmar, which they do. And in Agelmar's study, she actually gets help to go sit in front of him. Like, she is still supremely depleted and weak. But she's getting just down to business. She's just being another badass, or being a badass again. And Agelmar is sort of obviously glad about the victory, but you can see he's concerned about what he saw there. He talks about the soldiers, talking about how, you know, the light willed this, and this is all really good. But what Agelmar saw at Tarwin's Gap was a man channeling huge amounts of the power to great destruction, and it is obviously quite unsettling to him. And Moraine's response to that is, "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills." Okay, thanks, Aes Sedai.
Thanks for nothing.
She checks in with Agelmar to make sure that Payton Fane is still secure, and he confirms that he is. And she reports that they had found the Green Man, that he's dead now, and unfortunately the Eye of the World is gone, so there will be no more quests for young men from Shinar. Like, apparently this is a thing they used to do. They used to go into the Blight looking for the Eye of the World. So young adventurers are not going to be able to do that anymore. She explains that they've broken the winter and that the last battle is yet to come. And Rand sort of wants to chime in and say, no, I killed the Dark One, but she just shoots a glare at him and he shuts right up.
Best don't mention that.
Then we skip ahead a week, and people are still celebrating. The people from Fal Moran have now arrived back, and people are still ringing bells. It's huge celebration. But Rand obviously is in no mood for celebrating. He's sort of made up his mind about something, and we join him as he's practicing with a sword under Land's supervision on a balcony overlooking Lord Elgamar's private garden. And Land saying, you know, like, you don't have to become a blade master in the first day, right? Like, you're pushing yourself way too hard. And Rand makes a comment about not having enough time and wanting to make Tam proud. And he also says he confirms with Lan, or Lan confirms with him, that neither Lan or Moraine will try to stop him from what he wants to do, and they don't really delve into what that is at that point. But when Lan leaves, he's replaced by Egwene, who comes to find Rand, and he tells her that he's made a decision to go away. He doesn't know where he's going to go, and he says when Egwene says, Moraine's going to be, she's going to be upset that you go. He's like, well, she's not even talking to me. She doesn't even know that I exist. There's nothing for me here. And she asks him, or she tries to convince him to come to the White Tower, because she says, Nynaeve's going to come and Matt's going to come. It's going to be great. It's going to have drinks. It's going to be a party.
Yeah.
But Rand declines, and she asks if he'll go to Eamon's Field, and he thinks about it, and he says, no, not home, never home. So he's already decided he's not going back to Eamon's Field. He's not going to the White Tower. And it then cuts to Moraine, who is in her bed chair, obviously still convalescing from her wounds, but she's using the little blue stone that hangs on her forehead, and explains in a monologue that it's actually also used for eavesdropping. You can use it to listen to someone far away, and she's been listening to Rand talking to Egwene and saying that he's going to leave. And the last words that you read is Moraine saying to herself, "The prophecies will be fulfilled. The dragon has been reborn." And thus ends The Eye of the World.
And there was much rejoicing.
And many bell ringings.
What did you guys make of that sort of conclusion? There's, Moraine also at one point says to Agelmar, "This is the Horn of Valir," and he goes, "Oh yes, with this we will level Shyle Ghul," and she goes, "No, must go to Ilion." I don't remember. I mean, apart from the lore of the Hunters of the Horn, starting in Ilion, I don't remember any reason why the Horn had to be in Ilion. Do you?
No.
Really, you've read a bit of the Great Hunt already. Like, do they talk about it much? I mean,
She just says that it is the home for the horn. It's where it needs to go. It's
okay.
the hunters come from Ilion to go and fetch it and to take it back there. It's the purpose of it.
I suppose it's part of the prophecy.
Part of the prophecy.
Is it?
Mm.
Like, I can't remember like a specific line about the Horn and linking it to Ilion, but I mean, of course, there's probably a reason why the hunters always depart from Ilion and the hunt starts there. Don't know.
That's it. Like, come on, boys, go fetch this thing for us and bring it back, please.
Mm-hmm. But the big takeaway from this one, I think, is that Rand still thinks that he's beaten the Dark One, and that he's now going to go live out his life somewhere that's not Eamon's Field, that's not anywhere else. He knows he can channel, so he's probably, already starting that whole thing of, I need to keep everyone at a distance so that I don't hurt them. Yeah, poor lad is troubled, to say the least.
He's being played like a fiddle, man.
Moraine, master of puppets,
She's listening to him even from afar.
and she's ignoring him, like she's not talking to him, she's not seeking him out, she's leaving him alone completely to see what he does, completely trusting in his sort of Taveran nature to put him in the right place at the right time. I mean, it's worked once before, so why wouldn't she do it again?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, she got them there, all three of them, and the girls, full hand. Even Ogre.
Yes, but I do find it funny that the only reason Aginor and Balthamel found it is because she took Matt there.
Yeah. And they found Matt because of the dagger, because of Shadow Logoth.
Yeah, that's when Agenor makes the comment about, he points at Matt and he says, "An old friend, an old enemy, or an old thing, an old friend, an old enemy."
Yeah.
It's the dagger.
Man.
Sure. That was again, as much as I remember reading it the first time, that goodness, the end was absolutely just confusing as it has done the same to me this time around. And I thought I was going to get it a lot better. But no.
Agreed.
No.
I think the criticism of the end is justified. I don't necessarily agree with what a lot of people say. Like I said before, like I don't feel like the threat of the Forsaken is diminished in any way, but there's a lot of like just not a lot, but there is some just confusion around
Well,
what actually
perhaps,
transpired.
maybe it's purposely done so that you like want an answer that you are ready to. Because I know that the minute I finished it, I grabbed Great Hunt and I started reading it immediately. I was like,
Yes.
stuff this. There must be some more answers out of this. I need to see what's happening. It's like,
And then the first thing you read is like, what do they call it? The Dark Friends Social
yeah,
is what people that talk about the books, they refer to that meeting as the Dark Friends Social. Because I think there's a couple people that you meet in there. Is Lanfear there?
Lanfear is there. Yes, it's yeah, no, it's a lot of really seedy characters that hang out there.
Well, it's told from the point of view of the man that calls himself Bors, who
Balls.
we established is Jacob Carradine, who's a high-ranking official in the White Cloaks.
Mm. No, that's a dodgy meeting there.
So, I mean, we've I'll use the word climax again. We've passed the climax here. I mean, there's not a lot of point in dwelling on this last chapter without talking about the book as a whole. So, before we do that, should we quickly pick our favorite moment from this stretch?
Yes.
Okay, Vili, you seem eager. Jody, you are traditionally unprepared. So, Vili, you go
You
first.
know me so well.
I absolutely love the Green Man hugging um
Mm,
what's his blood name?
Balthamel.
Balthamel to death with
Yes,
death cap mushrooms popping out of his mouth, and
amazing. Yeah,
it's just I can't wait to see that on the screen. It's gonna
it's
be
gonna.
great. It's
Yeah,
all manner of fungus and all manner of earth cleansing organisms
oh,
bursting one of the Forsaken.
if they could somehow film that in like a stop motion way that looks like a time delay video of a plant growing, that would just be
Yeah, that's going to
just
be
Superimpose
perfect.
it.
yes, give it that real nature documentary vibe.
Oh, yes. And here we see a fungus flowering.
Narrated by Attenborough.
What about you, Joe?
I'm
Or
also
do you
gonna have
want
to
me to
go
go?
with no. I got the Green Man. His
Okay,
final moment. His
okay.
super hippie move of his last energy that he has left in him to make that tree grow, and this massive
Mm.
tree growing again, stop motion, narrated by the BBC's classic man. And then yeah, like the tree and like everything, and that's that tree will never ever be affected by the blight, and it'll always stand as like this
That
monument
is cool.
to this battle. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. My favorite moment is actually a mirror of one of my earlier favorite moments is Matt killing things with his bow and arrows, standing in his stirrups
Yeah.
and just firing off arrows and killing everything with like one shot. And while he's doing it, he's shouting shit in the old tongue again.
Yes. And thank God he's always got his bow and arrow ready. Like he's always got it over his pommel with an arrow knocked. Thank God.
With the arrow knocked, and I mean, it pays off. It pays dividends.
So
Yeah.
who's going to try and read that old tongue? Come on, Moritz, go for it.
I, for the first time in all of our recordings, I don't actually have the book in front of me.
Because I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm not saying any of this.
So more El Elisande for the glory of Elisande, the light of the morning, whatever
Yeah.
the queen's name was.
No, that was
more of the same.
more,
Yeah.
more things I can mispronounce.
I remember reading the book for the first time and not having any clue, obviously, as to what Matt's future is going to be and how closely his memories, is linked to, his whole persona. And just thinking how cool that is, that the physical blood in his veins, and his genetics stemming from a Netherin is so strong, obviously with the aid of magic, that he can shout these things in the old tongue. Like, even the first time I read it, I was like, whoa, this is fucking cool. I dig this a lot. So yeah, whenever Matt does that, I'm on board. One of my previous favorite moments when we go through the list now, you'll see it was when Matt was shouting in the old tongue when they attack those Shadow Spawn before running off to Shadow Logoth.
That's no, that's going to be good, strong cinema, or well, TV right there.
Totally. So should I quickly read off what all of our old favorite moments are, and we can each pick one from the book?
Yep.
This is quite a fun little trip down memory lane. I don't know if you guys did the same thing, but I listened to all of them.
No.
Okay, so should I do it by book or should I do it by person?
Well,
I want to do it by person. I'm gonna put you guys on the spot.
put me on the spot.
So,
Go for it.
Billy, I'm gonna start with you. In our first episode, your favorite moment was the suspense walking the road to Eamon's Field.
That's right.
Do you remember that?
Yep, absolutely.
Chapter 2, the build-up of suspense, no reprieve. You were super into the suspense in those first two sections. In the third one, the boys' poor imitation of Lan while waiting for the ferryman, and Tom cleaning his nails with a knife. So, like, the boys
The
posturing.
posturing like.
The fourth one was Nynaeve sneaking up on and eavesdropping on Lan and Moraine. I think you said in the episode, that's Nynaeve 2, Lan 0.
Yep.
The next one was the message from the Maidens of the Spear in the Waste that they sent to the Tinkers. The sixth one was the lightning strike at Samuel Hake's Inn. Rand's first big channeling. Your seventh one was Morgase's audience chamber, when Elida says it's a heron-marked blade, and everyone reacts visibly, and they all move to like sort of stand guard and stuff. They're like, "Oh shit, who's this? The wolf in our midst?" And in our last episode, it was Lan's history.
Yeah, that tracks.
Okay. So interesting to hear now if your favorite moments from the book is any one of those, or if it's something else.
Yes, it is.
Lay it on us.
Chapter 1.
Oh yeah.
Still, that for me, that is what just stuck with me from the beginning. That entire scene sets up so much in terms of the building of just how fearful this can be, like how you can get sucked in by this world in your own head with nothing that's overly colorful, because there's not very colorful descriptions in it. It's just setting an incredible scene right there, and just the type of people. And Tam, come on, man, Tam.
Yeah.
Like, just Tam. Okay,
My favorite moment is Tam.
Okay. And of course, other great hero in that part is also Bella's right there.
Yeah.
Rand falls, and who helps him? Bella. He grabs her rein. And that's tripping over it, like drops his arrow, tried to hold on to the void, but all he did was fell. But Bella was there. No, it is, for me still, till this day, it's the biggest thing that I remember after all those years, was how well that set everything up for me. Sort of, it builds so much suspense to what they are going to be doing battle with. This cloaked rider appears to him. The breeze is not moving his cloaks. He can see no eyes. It's just utter, like a horse that looks like it's from hell. It's brilliant.
It's really great when juxtaposed with the prologue that ends in like total like power and chaos and like destruction. It's this like chaotic sort of scene, and then it's this like eerily quiet country road, two men alone, sort of shifty, like not knowing what's going on. There's no animal sounds, and then Rand has this sighting and stuff. Like it is an immediate thick layer of tension. That's it's palpable because of the noise just before it.
Yeah, before it was completely noisy and entire cities being flattened. It's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Right, Joe, you ready for your trip down memory lane?
Let's do it.
Okay, you had in the first episode Tam taking down Trollocs on Winter Night.
Oh, I forgot about that.
In the second one, it was Moraine telling the story of Manetherin. In the third one, it was Rand keeping a piece of string in his pocket that he thought might be useful later.
Hey, maybe that was sort of a light into the string, the tie,
Chord,
the
if you will.
chord, if you will.
Um, in our fourth episode, it was reading chapter 23's title, Wolf Brother.
I'm a simple man with simple tastes.
I remember you saying that, like, when you got there, you showed it to Christina, and she got excited also just reading the chapter title.
Yeah, that's all you need.
In the fifth episode, it was Tom taking on the Fade in Whitebridge, like everything
Ooh.
leading up to that, like the boys talking to him and him sort of confiding in them about his nephew, and then as the Fade arrives, like Tom sort of assuming that guardianship role of them and like taking charge, giving them his stuff, and then running at the Fade and attacking it head on. The sixth episode, the moment with the Grinwell family at the farm.
No, Elsie. She's my girl.
And then in the seventh episode, it was all Rand's interactions with Loyal in the library, like throwing
Loyal.
stones, stuff. Loyal.
Oui, oui.
And last week it was also in the library, but Moraine realizing the focus on the Eye of the World with all those stories coming together and all those pieces falling into place, and going, okay, she knows what they need to do, and then doing it.
Right. That's a mixed bag, isn't it?
Sure is. And then this time with the Green Man, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's none of those.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's not a specific moment, but it's like two chapters that follow each other, and it's Rand's interactions from sitting on the wall at Camelin and blixoming off, and that whole interaction with Elaine and her brothers, and then meeting the Queen and standing in that throne room and getting stared down, and then like afterwards having to tell the story, like, oh yeah, no, that happened when I was meeting the Queen. Like you were doing the what? that whole part of his life where
Who is Elaine?
fell basically. He just fell into this situation with queens and Aes Sedai and all
Yeah.
kinds of things, and then just trying to have to explain it
yeah.
afterwards. Yeah, that was cool.
It was cool because there's a lot happening there. There's a lot of main characters being introduced there. Like there's a lot of that, so you get all those like little nostalgia hits every time you read a name. And yeah, it is also like partially comical with Rand falling off the wall, and at times it's also kind of ominous with Elida doing her foretelling, and then people reacting to Rand's hair and Mark Blade, and then comical again when Rand gets back to the inn and people don't believe in Basil Gill. And apoplexy about the fact that he might be drawing the attention of the actual queen down upon his inn. Yeah, it's cool shit. That's not what I thought you were going to say, but okay, cool.
All right. Now, what did you think?
I thought you were going to pick the same one that I'm about to pick.
Oh, okay. Maybe I regret it. Let's hear the summary of your previous ones there before.
Okay, so my little walk down memory lane goes something like this. In the first one, it was the introduction of Lan. So Lan sort of like just moving away.
Yeah.
I'm a big Lan fan. In the second episode, it was Master Luan stretching and cracking his knuckles in front of that crowd, and everyone sort of piping down when he did it. Like all he had to do was crack his knuckles threateningly, and the Coplins and the Congos and shut up. Then in the next episode, it's Lan's surprise when he hears Nynaeve say that she tracked them there, when he's actively trying to cover up their tracks. In the fourth episode, it was Matt shouting his war cry in the old tongue before, attacking all those Trollocs that had been chasing them down the Camelin Road. In the fifth episode, it was everything about Elias, like just talking about what a badass he is, like killing a pheasant on the wing and a rabbit at 30 paces or whatever it was, and then when they get to the Tinker camp, he's lying on the ground when everyone else is sitting on stumps, and his general wolfishness. In the sixth episode, it was Basil telling Tom's history. Like I really enjoyed that. In the seventh episode, it was Lan kicking ass in the White Cloak camp in the rescue. The eighth episode was just the ways, everything about the ways. And then obviously in this episode, it was again Matt shouting in the old tongue and killing all those things in the Blight. But when I look back at the book as a whole, the thing that always stands out to me, and it stood out to me before this reread, it's what I think about when I think of the Eye of the World, and that is Shadow Logoth. Like
Mm.
that whole section in Shadow Logoth is super cool to me. I love Mashadar. I love More Death. And even that, I mean, I went back, I was like, how did I not put this in my favorite moments? But it's in that episode where Matt also does the shouting in the old tongue, and they do their war cry. And after that fight, they run off to Shadow Logoth. And that whole section together is what's always stood out most to me about the Eye of the World, more so than the ending or the individual character stories or their arcs or Lan and Nynaeve, which somehow I don't remember or was
Oblivious
oblivious.
to complete.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of idiot doesn't read the black and white story that's unfolding in front of them? But yeah, Shadow Logoth. That's my favorite part. And whenever they return to it in the subsequent books, whether that is to go find the Towers of Genji or whatever the Midnight Towers of Midnight, or when Rand goes back to go find the maiden that got lost there. Rand has a fight with one of the Forsaken. There, I can't
Is
remember
that
which one of the
Samael?
Forsaken. It could be Samael. I think we had this interaction last time we spoke about it, and I
Yeah.
forgot that Samael actually existed. But I think it is Samael, and Moradin appears there, and he and Rand shoot balefire at each other, and the streams cross, and that's when their weird personality
Yes.
happens. But that's all in Shadow Logoth. And I just love the fact that it's this crazy, scary thing that even Trolloc armies don't want to go into.
Rad.
Oh,
That's a good one.
that's a very, very good one there.
So, do you guys have any final thoughts about the book? I mean, I know that, Villy, you've already read a number of chapters into The Great Hunt. Joe, I think you've started The Great Hunt as well already. I'm still waiting for my copy of the book, but I might have to go to the Kindle. But I mean, in terms of The Eye of the World, do you guys have any more thoughts or opinions about the book? Did your mind change about it at all this time around? Is there anything that stood out that you interpreted differently or surprised you?
Well, no, more just that I've got knowledge to where certain things play in. So
Mm,
understanding sort of now just what's not just the name that you're reading. You're like, ah, yeah, okay, cool. This tracks with that. You're getting a
mm.
better understanding. It's like watching Inception for the second time, and then you still don't know what really happens, but it helps a bit.
Yeah, I would agree. Like having I mean, obviously having the background knowledge. Because is this your second time through?
Yeah, this is my second read through.
Okay, so the first time you read it, it was
Oh, huge. But then
back
again,
then.
I had used my pocket guide at that time. So I was like,
Oh man,
what? Who's this? What's this? I don't
and I
get
would
this.
stop anything I'm doing and talk Wheel of Time with anyone at any time.
I think at that time we worked together in a retail store. Um,
Well, there we go. Plenty
we
of
had plenty of time.
time. Take stock? No,
No,
good talk.
no. That's why we've got these young casuals.
Yeah. How about you, Joe?
I think it's not a perfect book on the second reread. There's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's a few things in there, especially the ending that seemed
Mm,
rushed. It's not perfect, but I think it's
no.
a great introduction. Now looking back on it, the
Mm,
third reread now,
yeah.
I think it's a great way to start. I think that, obviously that's what caught my attention and kept me reading. It's a good start. It's a solid start. There's lots of mystery and there's lots of magic and stuff, but it's sufficiently explained to not make you afterwards go, "What the fuck did I just read? Like, what was this all about?"
Yes.
Yeah. And also, my biggest change, well, the newest thing, is the relationship between Lan and Nynaeve being so obvious and blatant, and how I did not catch on to this.
It's farcical.
It's how, what, why, how. Anyway, words
I
fail
must.
me. It's like
I,
almost every chapter that they're in, it gets mentioned. How did I
yes.
not notice it? Anyway.
I'm thinking, Joe, that we did know, and it was so obvious that we didn't think to keep a special part of our brain, hold that fact there. It's just like we know, move on,
Yeah. Well, I don't
and
know.
have since forgotten because we weren't trying to hold on to the memory. But I mean, yeah, I've said it multiple times. I'm also surprised at like how how blatant it is and how it was not that obvious to me on the first read.
Yeah.
And I like Billy's theory about the fact that you're reading it the first time, going, okay, when's the next battle? When's the next major thing? And those little interactions might have gone
Yeah,
less.
now blah blah blah. Get over this now.
As you mature as a reader, I suppose, after a couple of decades of reading, you get more into the character side of things.
Yeah.
I suppose that could be it.
The pacing of this book is actually breakneck.
Mm.
There is very little downtime. Maybe my definition of downtime now, knowing the whole story, is different from what I would have seen as downtime the first time I read the first book with no knowledge of the subsequent action. But it is just go, go, go. It went like we moved through the story at a pace that I was surprised by. Like major things were happening. They're at Shadow Logoth, they're at Whitebridge, they're in Camelin, they're at Fal Dara, they're in the Blight, they're at the Eye of the World. Like shit just happens. With my well documented distaste for that Rand and Matt travel section. I mean, even that was over in a single episode of our podcast.
Yeah.
Like it was a couple
Well,
chapters, if that.
Now, if did anyone count the days? Sort of a rough period in terms of from when the day that Moraine rocked up at Emmonsfield up
But I bet
until this point where they've been a week later in Fal Dara. Like I'm gonna say like maybe 40 days, 35 days. Is even
I think that's a lot. I don't know if it is even that much. I know the whole story plays out in about 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say now as well. Yeah, that's maybe because you said it. I don't know if I read it or because you told us. But yeah, like it's not as long as you think. It was 20 years for us waiting for new books to come out, but it's really only 2 years in the timeline of the story. So yeah, it just feels longer. But yeah, like a month probably in this first book. Like 30, 40 days is a pretty fair estimate. Somebody's counted the days. Google it.
Yeah, I bet.
Like we said it in that first the first recording, from chapter 1 until the shit's run loose and they're leaving the village is like 24 hours.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Super, super stoked with it. Cannot wait to get into like the real meat of it, hey, because you see these tidbits like just dangling, ready to be, tugged on.
That's been part of like I've not been able to put down Hunt for the Horn, the Great Hunt. I've just been I'm halfway through it and I've taken a week break from it, sort of looking at it and like, don't tempt me, Frodo Baggins. it's also ironically green in color. So I'm like...
And the stuff that's coming that I've forgotten, I ordered book 3 and it came this week. And I just opened it up in the middle of it and I started reading just one paragraph. And it's about Nynaeve and them in searching for the Bowl of Winds to change the weather. And I'm like, oh my God, the whole Bowl of Winds storyline. I've forgotten about that.
Really?
Yeah.
Book 3?
In book 3.
Holy shit.
They hadn't got it yet, but they already knew about it and they're looking for it. Because it also happens that now they've broken the bad weather, it's not getting warm again, and then it gets too warm. Then it's unseasonably hot the whole time, and they got to try and fix it to get weather again.
Sweating their asses off in Ilion.
Yeah.
And don't they actually only use the Bowl of Winds like in book 10 or 11 or 12? Like it's like later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's later that year.
Yeah. True that.
Touche. Yeah.
I reckon I'm going to be powering through this. By the time we sort of hopefully do the recordings for book 5, I'm going to be done. And I'm going to be rereading it a third time to carry and catch up. It's
Well, we didn't have to give you too many spoilers for the end of the story, did we?
No, there's a few here and there, but also
inconsequential ones like
just
Tom
like
and
Tom and Moraine. I'm just happy that she comes back. Well, Matt went and fetched her.
Yes.
I'm just nothing that's killing it for me at all. I mean, at the end of the day, the purpose of reading is to find out what happens in the end anyway.
It's true. Not yet. I mean, we haven't killed anything for you yet, but man, it's going to be some mind fields.
If I've learned one thing from the whole Nynaeve and Lan storyline is that I'm going to be looking out for this whole Moraine and Tom's storyline. Maybe it's clear as day from the next book, because there was even one mention of it here in this book.
When they are waiting for the ferryman to arrive, the boys are sort of like posing with their weapons and stuff, and Tom cleans his fingernails with his knives. Moraine laughs out loud.
Yeah. So she checks him out there. That's first step. So now keep an eye out in book 2, 3, 4. Like there's a relationship developing under our noses again, and we're oblivious. So we'll
with a bond with Lan, with Moraine, would he have been able to feel that if she had a little tickling fancy for Tom?
Sure.
Well, we speculated about that.
Yeah, and then maybe then he's like, well, if you can do that,
Lan is so against Tom.
Mm.
Because he tells him, like, I don't care if you write to Shal Ghul, you know, like, he's very, very much against Tom's presence every time.
A lot of people seem to be.
Yes.
It's just his thing.
So, guys, is that it? Have we wrapped up our thoughts on the Eye of the World, and now we're just rearing to go to the Great Hunt?
Oh, I'm got so many questions already on there. I can't wait to get into that.
Okay, well, in that case, then I will go through the admin stuff and say that listeners, please reach out to us on Twitter at Blood and Ash Pod or on Facebook at Blood and Ashes Podcast. You can go to our website, which is just bloodandashespodcast.com, and leave some feedback there. We do welcome it. Those people that have written in and had their opinions and their messages sort of called out in the episode have all responded positively. They all love it. So there's a lot of space, people. If you write in, chances are you'll get a mention on the podcast. So please do. And then on the next episode, we are going to start book 2, The Great Hunt, going from the prologue called In the Shadow through to the end of chapter 5 called Shadow in Shinar. Is there anything that you guys wanted to add before we sign off?
Nope. I'm done. I'm spent.
Okay, cool. Well, on that note, I will see you guys next time.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.